No other city in New England is more closely associated with this country's beginnings than the hometown of Nathaniel Hawthorne, Salem, on the Massachusetts coast, just north of Boston. From its founding in 1626 to the present, the sea has been the dominant force in Salem's development and has influenced every aspect of its life. Here, in an area of 1/2 square mile, live the past and the present side by side. From tangible evidence of earlier times to modern condominiums and pleasure boats tied to wharves which were once the home of great sailing ships. Pioneer Village, an authentic recreation of the first settlers' primitive community, is testimony to their courageous commitment to establish a permanent community in the New World. The Peabody Museum of Salem, founded in 1799 by members of the East India Marine Society and the oldest continuously operated museum in the country, exhibits displays which illustrate the town's marriage to the sea from its earliest fishing days to the time when it was one of the great seaports on the Atlantic coast, bringing treasures from all over the world to a new country on its way to becoming a great nation. The Essex Institute, along with its distinguished historical library and exhibits of Essex County artifacts, preserves many of the lavish houses of merchants whose fortunes rode on their ships. These, together with the houses on Chestnut Street, said to be one of the most beautiful streets in America, are among the finest examples of federal architecture. There are relics, too, of earlier and more somber days. The stark 17th century homes of the first Puritan settlers, whose religious fervor led to the persecution of innocent people during the witchcraft trials of 1692. The story of this tragic event is told at the Witch House and the Witch Museum. No building, however, more eloquently speaks of Salem's maritime tradition than the Custom House, now part of a National Historic Site. At these wharves, rich cargoes from Africa, India, the Pacific, and Far East were registered. Enough taxes were collected here in the early 1790s to fund 1/5 of the entire federal budget. It was here, too, Salem's most famous son, Nathaniel Hawthorne, while the port surveyor tells us he found the tattered bit of embroidery that gave its name to the classic story, The Scarlet Letter. As America's first internationally acclaimed author, Hawthorne also found inspiration in a landmark only a few blocks away. The Turner Ingersoll House, now the only remaining 17th century mansion in New England, was transformed by his famous novel into what is now one of the best-known houses in America, the House of the Seven Gables. Now part of a complex containing 2 other 17th century houses, as well as the house in which Hawthorne was born, it is preserved for all time and toured by visitors who come here from all over the world. Our guide for this visit is Vincent Price. He will begin with Nathaniel Hawthorne's birthplace and then lead us through the House of the Seven Gables.
On the second story of this mid-18th century house, Nathaniel Hawthorne was born on the 4th of July, 1804. From the time of the Revolution, the Hawthornes had occupied this house, bought by Nathaniel's grandfather, Captain Daniel Hawthorne, about whom a popular ballad, Bold Daniel, had been written. Here in the modestly furnished parlor, Nathaniel's parents would entertain friends and family, passing time in lively conversation, discussing Salem's rising prospects as an international center of maritime commerce. Still present is a tilt-top table, once owned by the family, and a brass lantern clock from Ipswich, England, made in 1610, only 20 years before the earliest Hawthorne arrived in Massachusetts with Governor John Winthrop. Through the door, we enter the back parlor or captain's study, where voyages were planned and business details discussed in private. Here are displayed some objects which reflect the family's connection with the sea, a watercolor of the ship America, on which Nathaniel's father served as first mate during a voyage which brought to Salem, among other rich cargoes from the East, the first elephant seen in this country. She was an unusual beast. After having endangered the ship's supply of fresh water, she was provided with quantities of beer instead, a beverage she was unwilling to give up after her arrival here in 1797. After climbing the narrow backstairs, we enter the rear or children's bedchamber, where it is likely that Nathaniel and his sisters spent much of their time. The tall child's chair was owned by the Manning family, while the bed, though not a family piece, accurately reflects the type of framed, rope-strung bed used during the time the family lived here. The small front chamber served as a spare or guest room, although persons confined by illness or childbirth might have used it as well. It was in this room that Hawthorne was born. The spare and simple furnishings reflect the rather limited means of the family at this time, while older pieces such as this three-panel chest echo the family's 17th century roots in the community. Sadly, Hawthorne's mother was forced to sell the house in 1808 when her husband died of yellow fever while on a voyage to South America. The probate inventory on display shows us the meager estate she inherited, which left her with only $649 after all her husband's debts were settled. She and her children returned to her father's house on Herbert Street, where young Nathaniel was raised. On the other side of the second floor, we may see the great or master bedchamber, where in happier days Captain Nathaniel and his wife slept in an elegant four-poster canopy bed. Just beyond is a dressing room where a washstand and a set of Manning family furniture is displayed. These beautifully preserved pieces were owned by Hawthorne's uncle, Robert Manning, who became a surrogate father to Nathaniel after his real father's death. Descending the front stairs, we enter the kitchen, which features a brick fireplace with 2 brick ovens. Here, cooking was only a part of the ongoing household activities, which included the informal entertainment of guests, childcare, and dishwashing. Crumbs which fell to the floor attracted mice kept in check by household cats, or by tin cats, such as this humane mousetrap, which served as a small cage during a mouse's period of imprisonment. Crossing the formal gardens between the Hawthorne birthplace and the House of Seven Gables, we are able to enjoy one of the area's most outstanding displays of flowers and ornamental shrubs and trees in a traditional setting.